guys, it's Nick, and it's preview time for your 2025 2026 Chicago Blackhawks. Yes, that means hockey season is back. And, well, it's a little bit of a celebration season for this Chicago Blackhawks organization as they go into it with their centennial celebration. Yes, 100 years of Blackhawk hockey starts this season. Fortunately, I'm not wearing my centennial jersey as I haven't received it yet, but I should expect to see that jersey come in relatively sooner rather than later. But we're in for an interesting season. Celebrating 100 years of Blackhawk hockey, a special jersey for home games. Didn't do anything for road games, it sounds like. Potential third jersey to come out. However, the main thing is Blackhawk hockey being played. How is it going to look? On ice? How are the young players developing this season? How are they looking and where they are improving upon from last season post trade deadline? The reason why I'm saying post trade deadline, that was when we saw that youth push come into the Blackhawks last season, and they started to look like they had more fun on ice. And I frankly think we are going to start seeing that with the extensions of Spencer Knight and Frank Nazar. It's looking bright for your Chicago Blackhawks. So, let's get into the 2025-26 Blackhawk season by predicting the Central Division standings. To start this out, we're starting out with my predictions for the standings in the Central Division. Yeah, as you see, the Blackhawks are in last place in the division. However, I did think they will improve upon on points that they had last year. This year, I'm looking into the numbers. I think this team is easily a 72-point team right now. They look like they can be a team that's harder to beat than they were last year. They look like a team that can kind of pull out at least 5 to 6 more wins than they did last year. This is going to be a young team still, but with the young defense that we have built, some young forwards coming in, that's why I think the Hawks in their centennial, not the best season. It ends up around 72 points is my prediction. Then I went with Nashville at number 7. Last year, a lot of people pegged them to make the Stanley Cup playoffs, maybe even win the division at points. They really disappointed. The team looked old last year. They didn't really improve their roster this off season, and I think they're going to still stick in like the bottom 7 of the division. Minnesota is a team that falls in the standings in my predictions this year, going with 87 points on the year. Something I don't trust with Minnesota, health. Last year proved it. They had a ton of injuries that hurt their roster. If they stay healthy, however, I think they do maybe battle for a wild card. I don't really like the roster construction, especially after signing Kirill Kaprizov to his lucrative contract that he now has, that it's the highest paid contract in NHL salary cap era history. He's never played 82 games in his career. The Wild are a team that, how is Philip Gustafson going to manage the load as the full-time starter? Yeah, he was mainly the starter last season, but he did fall off season prior and bounced back last year. I feel like he could be one of those goalies that are good one year, the next year not so good. Then I have now having a name, because last year I kept calling them the Utah No Names, now the Utah Mammoth. I think they do battle for a wild card this year, and I think at 95 points is realistic with this team. They're young, they have good talent on their roster. I really like the construction they went with, and Utah might make some noise this year. Then, unfortunately, St. Louis comes in, and I wish they are lower, but frankly, I think they're around this point range because Jim Montgomery, good coach. He got that team really rolling when they hired him. 97 points is where I see them, and that wild card positioning. Then I have the Winnipeg Jets falling off from winning the President's Trophy to going into third place in the division. I think mainly because last year was such a high, it's going to be hard to replicate what they were able to do last year. They did lose some major pieces, but they did acquire big name, a big name in Chicago sports history, and Jonathan Toews. I will honestly be telling you this right now. If the Jets make the playoffs, if the Hawks don't make the playoffs, which how I predict it, they won't. I will be cheering on Jonathan Toews and the Winnipeg Jets. I will be honestly looking at a lot of Jets games this year, keeping track on how the captain does in Winnipeg. Uh, Second place, I have Colorado. I like some of the moves they did, but I still don't know how I like their goaltending. But I think Colorado is one of those teams that bounces back and maybe finishes second place is a good move, good spot for them. That second, third place is, in my opinion, toss up. But the first place, I really think the Dallas Stars could contend for the President's Trophy this year. I like the moves they've made. Glenn Golson coming back to Dallas to be the head coach. He was a former head coach of the Dallas Stars. However, that was his first time coaching, and now he had experience as an assistant, going to back-to-back Stanley Cup final appearances with the Edmonton Oilers as an assistant. I think the Stars are going to be better off than what they were last year, falling again in the Western Conference final. I really like the Stars' roster construction. So that's how I have the Central Division standings of this coming season. So let's have a little bit of fun here. I'm going to predict the opening night roster forward lines because the defense, it's going to be easier to predict how that looks. Forwards, in my opinion, the way it's been going throughout preseason, it's kind of giving us an idea, but I just wanted to throw out where I think some line combos are going to sit. First line obviously has been going this way throughout training camp. Burakovsky, who was acquired this offseason, um, Connor Bedard at center, and Ryan Donato. Donato last year worked great with Connor Bedard. And Donato was a former teammate of Burakovsky in Seattle. So maybe the Hawks are kind of picking off of what happened last year that worked for Donato and former teammates being reunited. Maybe something happens there. And Burakovsky's game, I'm a little worried with because he does have an injury history. However, we did have a player who came to the Hawks last year who was one of the one of the best players on the forward lines last year and we'll talk about him later, shortly. Second line, it's a line that we had last year at the end of the year. Tyler Bertuzzi, Frank Nazar, and Teuvo Teravainen. I think the Hawks stick with this line together for a while. Blashill, the new head coach of the Blackhawks, seems to be doing that during training camp, and I think that's where we're going to see that second line combo. With this how it gives it, the Hawks now have two threats now. Bedard on that first line, Nazar on that second line. It's kind of balancing the Hawks out a little bit more. Third line, I project right now, Landon Slager, who was injured slash sick for the majority of training camp. However, he is healthy now. I think he makes the opening night roster, mainly because his style of play fits against the team we're playing against, the Florida Panthers, who granted are without Alex Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk. But I think Slager is a good slot in for this third line for the Blackhawks for opening night. Jason Dickinson at center, and Ilya Mikheyev, which, of course, I mentioned how he had an injury history coming to the Blackhawks, and he worked out. Maybe Burakovsky has that same kind of mojo that Mikheyev ended up with last season. And then, fourth line, I really liked his game during preseason. Colton Dock made opening night as a prediction. Then the captain, Nick Foligno, centering, and the return of Sam Lafferty coming to the Blackhawks to finish out that forward line. There are some forwards that I didn't dismiss on this lineup, mainly because I do think they should be in the lineup. However, there were spots that I think kind of, for matchup game, it didn't work out. Oliver Moore, he's had a good preseason. Ryan Green, he's had a good preseason. They could easily make this lineup. I'm saying that. They are my two extra forwards I would keep on the team right now and slot them in. It's just a weird spot where we're going into the regular season. How I'm seeing it, it looks like Oliver Moore may be sent down as of the time of me filming this slash uploading this video. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Lucas Reichel, with that trade rumors happening, that's why he's off the lineup. But otherwise, I think this is what we see. The Hawks are sounding like they're going to be playing more of a structure where Blashill's not going to be throwing the blender on the lineup, especially for Connor Bedard, every night, which we saw for the last 2 years. Which, good. I'm liking that idea. Let Bedard have a line for a period of time. If it's not working, then you look at changing up the lines. You gotta look at it in a way. If lines are not working, but it's so early in the season, keep them together, see if they start building something. If it doesn't by maybe fifth or sixth game right now, then change it up. That's where I'm at with how the Hawks are in this coming season for the forward lines. So, let's talk about what to expect for this season. As you saw, I predicted the Hawks to have 72 points on the season, which probably puts them in that bottom 5 range in the standings again. Which, okay, it sucks to be in the bottom 5 for another year in a row, but for what the Hawks are going for, they're still rebuilding. However, I think we're closer to the end of the rebuild rather than what people like national media thinks. Some people think the Hawks don't have a prospect pool worth it, but the Hawks do have a prospect pool coming. Some players might come in at the end, towards the end of the season, like third overall selection, Anton Frundell, who might come and jump from Djurgården to the NHL right after the Swedish league is over. There's also players in college like Sasha Boiver, who I think could make a jump to the NHL after his sophomore season in the NCAA. Then you also have a player in the KHL like Roman Kantsarov, who could make the jump from the KHL to the NHL after the KHL season is over, I think. You're seeing it where the prospects are in different leagues, yes, but they are getting closer to the NHL than some people think. This team has something going for themselves. Young players getting close and ready to go. Although more, as I mentioned, would love to see him make opening night roster. However, it might be difficult to make it, especially how things have been looking through um, reports since he scored that goal against St. Louis in preseason this year. It seems like he could be that odd man out, even though I think he has a good shot at being in that list of forwards to make the team pretty quick. Or they are trying to do a kind of development path like what they did with Frank Nazar. We have a good young defense getting built. We have Alex Vlasic as our number one defenseman. We have Sam Renzel, who looked great last year when he came from the Minnesota Golden Gophers and then played in the NHL. He looks great, and he's looked great in the preseason. You have Artem Lashunov, who was our second overall pick just over a year ago, and he looked solid when he came up in the NHL. He had some 19-year-old defenseman mistakes, but that's okay. And he's looked good in the preseason, but with some rookie mistakes as well. But that's going to happen. Ethan Dalmastro has had a rough preseason to go, but he's one of those guys who last year looked good in the NHL. Wyatt Kaiser, he's on the team still, and he's looked really solid this preseason. Connor Murphy as well, who's in his final year of his contract. Then the forwards, I really like what the Hawks have going for themselves. Connor Bedard going into a contract year, so might be looking at him where points could start rising, especially I do believe he's going to start getting more points than he did last year. Last year was a rough year for everyone on the team, but I think we're going to see something click with him and the other young players on this team. Frank Nazar, he's looked great in the preseason. He looked great at towards the end of the year. Probably was our best player at the final dozen and a half games, in my opinion, last year. He looked really good last year at the towards the end, and well, he earned a big contract raise. This team has something. It has something getting built, and I like what I'm seeing from what Kyle Davidson has put together. Young players are starting to come up. Colton Dock has really improved his game this preseason, which I think is good to see. We have a guy now that we know who could play bottom line minutes, that can drive to the net, take that net, make a net front presence, use his body, and help the Hawks produce and kind of play with an edge. I like that. There's something getting built, and it seems like this team might be more difficult team to play against how they've played preseason games. I get it, it's preseason, but the way they've looked in preseason, they've been playing aggressive hockey. And I think that's the fact that they have a coach they're backing, and it's Jeff Blashill behind the bench for your Chicago Blackhawks. And I think he's going to get the best out of these players this coming season. So, down in the comments down below, I want to hear what your thoughts are going into this centennial season of your Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you for watching the broadcast. Please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And most of all, let's go Hawks! And hockey is back.